This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Watch the greenbacks tumble.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com, and we're broadcasting live from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. And there's a link to all of your instructors at USAPrepares.com. Alex is producing the broadcast in Minnesota. Monday, we are going to have another meetup, as we always do. John Reagan's going to be with us, the unprepared prepper. And he's absolutely right. There are things that people who are in the survivalist mode have forgotten, overlooked, discounted, not considered. He's going to talk about what those items are. And I have a box, a large box came in from overseas. The LEDs are here. The LEDs that have been promised to us for about a month have arrived from a slow boat from China. And they're here. So your emergency LED lighting kits, if you want to retrofit your house, as we are doing at the farmhouse right here in Missouri, with LED lighting, 12-volt lighting strips, we've got them. We're going to bring them to the expo. So those of you, we're going to bring them to the expo too. So those of you who have ordered them at the meetup, we're going to have them for you. So that's Monday. John Reagan and the LED strips are going to be distributed. Okay, John Moore's with us. Welcome, John Moore.
Thank you. Good to be here, Vincent.
Hey, John, you have been to every single one of our Get Prepared Expos here in Missouri, and we're delighted that you're going to be back. And I'd like to share with the class why you are with us. You know, when we started Expo number 1, there were lots of speakers who could be the headline speaker for the Get Prepared Expo.
That's right.
And we talked with Glenn Beck. Yeah, we talked with Glenn Beck's people. We talked with Gerald Salente one-on-one a couple of times. And we selected you because your message is what we thought was the most important message: violent climate change. And it's here. John, you have been talking about violent climate change? Yeah.
It is. I've been talking publicly about it since 2005. And we're seeing what I talked about in my paper that I wrote and published in January 2006. We're seeing these things come to happen in real time, in real life. Ever-increasing number and severity of hurricanes, number and severity of tornadoes, number and severity of volcanism, and number and severity of seismic activity. And these will continue to happen, Vincent. We will continue to see more of these events and more violent ones as we get deeper into this cycle, culminating in what the U.S. Navy says in their classified briefings, a violent ocean event where all these oceans will come out of their basins, flooding all coastal areas worldwide up to 400 feet above sea level. And that's the deal, and that's about as real as it gets, Vincent.
John, back in 2005, when you started talking about this, what kind of a reception were you met with as you started saying these things were going to happen?
Well, it wasn't the general public so much. It was the people who subscribe and go to Prophecy Club meetings, for example. They're used to hearing things that are not mainstream media, and of course the listeners of my radio show also. Mainstream the general public in 2005 and 2013 is not terribly receptive to the topic at all, on one hand. On the other, the topic of the Gulf Stream having stopped is not so threatening to their worldview And the science is pretty rock solid that the Gulf Stream did, in fact, stop June 12, 2010. That's not quite so threatening to people, and they're more open to taking an objective look at that particular matter and the effects it's having on the jet stream and the effects it's having on climate. So I was, quite frankly, I was really happy to see that event finally had happened. We knew it was going to happen. When I was writing my paper in 2005 in the fall, we knew that 5 to 20 years in the future, the Gulf Stream would stop. What we didn't know was something else would happen 5 years in the future. That was the British petroleum oil spill, which oil has the same effect on the salt water that fresh water does. It does not allow a thermal barrier to develop between cold water and warm water, allowing these ocean currents to function in the way they always have functioned for so many centuries. And that's what broke the Gulf Stream. Finally, it was the British petroleum oil spill in the spring of 2010. And that's where we are today, with a broken Gulf Stream, a jet stream that's acting very bizarre and very haphazard, which is resulting in unpredictable amounts of precipitation, both highs and lows, and unpredictable temperatures. You may have noticed, Vince, you're a rancher. If you look at the weather report, they cannot predict the weather with any kind of accuracy much more than 12 hours before the event. And where we had grown used to somewhat accurate predictions 7-8 days out, but those days are long gone, aren't they, Vincent?
John, I was frustrated beyond belief trying to get hay cut, raked, and baled at our farm. And I was looking at about 250,000 pounds of hay that I had to cut. And this is hay that our animals, our herd of cows, needs to have in order to survive the winter.
Right.
And we were looking at the exact right time to cut the hay, and it was perfect, but it was raining. And finally we had a window of 3 days of nice weather. A warm breeze, sunny, where the hay could be cut and dried on the field and then raked and then baled in these 1,000-pound round bales. Well, here's what happened. The weather report said 10% chance of precipitation. Well, 10%, I'm willing to risk that.
They'll put
I cut the hay, John, and it poured.
That's as low as it gets, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, it was virtual. I mean, the sky looked great. The radar map looked great. We cut the hay, and it poured for days. And then, I was looking at, it was really serious. It looked like we were going to have to sell our herd because it looked like we weren't going to be able to winter the cows. And we're talking about 100 animals. Maybe even over 100 head of cows. So it rained, and then we looked. There was another 10% chance of rain several days later. We let the grass dry out. The ground had to dry out because the moisture was coming up from the ground through the hay, and it was getting the hay. It was starting to get moldy. So we have this machine. It's called a tedder, and it spreads the hay around in a random pattern. So we traverse the field with these tractors, and we spread the hay around, and it dried. And then we were ready to bale it, and it rained again on the hay.
Oh,
so then, we're looking at, the last ditch effort seemed to look like it was going to be a total loss for the hay. And then we had about 2 days of what looked like 40% chance of rain. And I was talking to Mrs. Finelli, and she said it's got a 40% chance of rain. I said, we're in great shape then. If it's 40% and they say it's going to rain, we're in good shape. It's not going to rain. We're going to be fine. And we tedded the hay again and baled it. And it was clear for 3 days. What I'm saying is, John, we can't trust the weather reports. I'm talking about weather.gov. It is absolutely worthless.
Well, here's the reason why, Vincent. These weather predictions are based on models that these meteorologists learn when they're in meteorology college, and those models are broken. And unfortunately, many of the younger ones, especially the ones under 40 years old, they were never trained in classic meteorology to be able to independently make observations and make predictions based on their own private, personal observations, as opposed to using these computer models that they were trained to use in college. So these weather people need to get back to basics and learn basic skills and abandon these useless, broken computer models that they make their predictions with.
John, we used to, no kidding, we used to have the Farmer's Almanac, and we have talked about this, and you could look, that was published well over a year in advance, because you could buy it, and it would have the year's worth of weather predictions. You could look at that on a specific day, and you could say, okay, it's going to be sunny, I'm going to cut my hay, on May 31st. You could bank on it. But as you said, we can't, there's no sense in watching the weather report. I mean, just open the window and look outside. You're better off doing that. I'm not kidding. It's awful.
I agree.
Absolutely awful.
I agree.
So I said to Mrs. Finelli, okay, we need to add another skill to our toolbox, and that is we need to become meteorologists. That's what we need to do. We can't trust them. But and I'm wondering, John, if some of it might be done on purpose to disrupt the food supply. Here's what I said about a week ago. 1/3 of the hay had been cut by people like me who couldn't bale it.
Right.
Okay, so that was that. There was a possibility that we'd lose about 1/3 of the hay. Another third had been cut and baled damp. So there was too much moisture in it, and that hay is going to become moldy. And then the third component, the third third of the hay that farmers have, had not been cut, and it's too old. So 1/3 is baled, and it's going to be moldy. 1/3 was cut and was unable to be baled, and then the other is too old. So what I'm saying is, I think it's, even though there's plenty of moisture around, I don't think we're going to have the food supply for the cows this winter. That's what I'm saying.
This coming winter of 13 and 14?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's
what I'm talking about.
Situation.
John Moore. No, not a good situation at all. John Moore, Vin Finelli, USAPrepares.com, speaking as a farmer to those of you who are interested in what's happening with cattle. We'll be right back. John Moore's with us. We're talking about violent climate change. John Moore's with us, and he's going to be at the Get Prepared Expo July 19, 20, and 21. Class is going to be really interesting. We're going to have two survival banquet dinners. The freeze-dried guy's cooking, and for $8, you can have a banquet meal with us. It's limited to about 280 to 300 of us, and we're going to be having dinner with our instructors. So you get a chance to meet John Moore. That'll be Friday night at 6 o'clock, banquet dinner, and Saturday night at 6 o'clock, $8 per dinner. It's the cost of what you might get at McDonald's, but it's going to be freeze-dried, premium survival food, and you'll get a chance to hear all of your instructors at the microphone introducing themselves and telling you what their seminars and exhibits are about. So that's at the Get Prepared Expo. Tickets are going to be on sale next week on the internet. $18 for 3 days, $8 discounted for 1 day, and $10 at the door per day. So your choice. And John Moore, we're talking about the violent climate change. We're talking about volcano activity. We're talking about tides. What about the infrastructure? Europe, what do you think they're going to experience? Because their infrastructure is not buried as ours is in the United States.
Well, you're right, and places like Ireland, for example, was the canary in the mine, so to speak. That first winter after the Gulf Stream stopped, the winter 2010-2011, pipes were freezing underground in Ireland because they were not, the frost line had gone deeper than it ever had since they've kept records. And weather records in Europe typically go back centuries. In Moscow, for example, They have weather records going back 1,000 years. And human-built infrastructure is built with certain engineering premises, one of them being you bury freshwater pipes below the frost line so that they won't freeze. Of course, they'd always done that in Ireland, and the frost line had always been so shallow it was not much of an issue until the winter of 2010-2011, when it became an issue, and the pipes were freezing underground. Now, if you can imagine, Vincent, these infrastructures don't just pop up out of nowhere. It takes decades to put in place the freshwater pipes, the sewer lines, the foundations, the bridges, dams, and so forth, all of which have certain underlying engineering premises, all of which are certainly at risk depending on where they are now. At the moment, extreme flooding is taking place in parts of Europe due to unprecedented amounts of rain. England, for example, is undergoing a very cool, very wet spring, putting agriculture there at great risk. The farmers can't get their equipment out in the field to do their planting, and the harvest in England is going to be dramatically reduced this calendar year. But we're seeing that worldwide, all over the northern hemisphere especially, that grain growing especially is at great risk in many parts of the world, in many parts of the northern hemisphere, which will lead to reduced harvest and dramatically increased prices. And that will affect all of us. You may not have a personal connection to agriculture, those people listening to you and I talk, on one hand. On the other, we all eat. And even things like Campbell's tomato soup has wheat in it as a thickener. But you were telling me an interesting story, Vince, how the intensity of the ultraviolet is so great that your tomato plants cannot take very much direct sunlight exposure, can they?
John, my experience at the farm right here in the Ozark Mountains, you've been to the farmhouse, and what I've decided to do this year is plant our tomatoes in these very large buckets, about the size, if you were to stretch your arms out in a circle out in front of you, these buckets are about that big, maybe 24 inches in diameter, maybe a little larger, about 24 inches deep. So let's say 10 or 15 gallons capacity. And we've got a bunch of these buckets on our veranda, and we've planted tomatoes in them, and they cannot take the heat. We had to put them under the roof area so that they only get a few hours of sunlight a day, because they cannot take the direct sunlight of more than half a day. Half a day is too much. John Moore, Vin Finelli, we're going to talk more about it when we come back. John Moore's with us, and we're talking about the Get Prepared Expo and the violent climate change that we're experiencing. And I mentioned to John, we were talking the other day, and I mentioned to him that our tomato plants are just taking a beating. And we had Mike Knox on the air with us, and we're talking about gardening, and I explained that to him. And yes, the tomato plants are taking a beating from the direct sunlight here at the farm in the Ozark Mountains. And John, I've also noticed a phenomenon. I've looked at our roof, and during the direct sunlight, the shingles are expanding to the point where they are raising off the roof. And I've not seen that ever before in my life, when the composition shingles actually will bend upward toward the sky because they're expanding because of the heat, and they have no place to go, so they raise upward. And it's like a ripple effect on the roof. And when the sun goes down, the shingles, will come back down. But over time, that expansion and contraction is going to destroy the roof.
Well,
and that's
so.
what I'm saying.
They're not really engineered to go through that whole mechanism you're describing. Hopefully there's a warranty on the shingles, and you can get a metal roof.
and that's what Mrs. Finelli and I talked about. And John, you've seen our roof, and the guy that put the roof on said to me after he was all done, he said, "If I had seen the pitch of that roof, I never would have done it." Right. It's pretty steep. It's 15
It's
over
steep.
12, so it's a pretty steep.
A lot of squares. I think a square is 10 by 10 feet. And refresh my memory, but I believe they're architectural shingles, aren't they?
Yes, they are. They are. They're architectural. And John, here's an interesting thing. When we were building this house, I called the various shingle companies up, the manufacturers, and I said, I'm looking all over the internet, and I can't seem to find a chart that indicates on a scale of like 1 to 100 which shingles absorb the most amount of heat as compared to the other shingles, meaning the different colors. There's the greens,
right.
the tans, the reds, the browns,
right.
The white and the black. So obviously black would be the one, the dark black would be the one absorb most of the heat, and white would be their least. So on a scale of 1 to 100 or 1 to 10 or something, some kind of scale, I'd like to be able to select within some scientific information which shingles I'd like to have in addition to the color. Okay,
right.
And they told me that there was no such thing. Why? Because the lawyers said we can't do it. And this is their excuse. I don't believe any of it. But they said the lawyers would say we'd get sued if we were off by a little bit. Well, so that means that nobody has any information. You just have to know that, okay, black is going to be the hottest and white's going to be the least hot. It's ridiculous. Anyway, so it is. I mean, they know that information. They know which shingles are going to last the longest. They can say that black lasts the least or white lasts the least, whichever it may be. I don't know. So, John, infrastructure is a big problem in Europe. How about here? Because I know that when I lived on the East Coast, we were looking at burying pipes between 24 and 30 inches because of the frost line. Right. Now, are we going to be impacted by that? Are our pipes deep enough, or what coming forward?
Well, our climate in North America, most parts of North America, will be getting warmer long term. Short term, there could be bizarre swings of extremes, cold and extremes heat. The record left in stone and rock that the geologists and scientists look at when it comes to where the North Pole has been in the past and where it will be in the future is the following. The magnetic north moves in a certain direction for decades, if not centuries, in a certain direction. Right now, the magnetic north is moving towards, the magnetic North Pole is moving towards Siberia. And then over a period of 24 to 48 hours, true north catches up with it. When that happens, that will be the pole shift that we've been anticipating, and that's when all the latitudes in the United States drop farther south. So where we are here in the Ozarks, we'll be getting probably the climate of Louisiana and Mississippi, which I'm not particularly looking forward to. I don't particularly like cold weather, but if you've been to those parts of the country when it's summertime, you know what I'm talking about.
Mm. Yeah. So what will they be? What will they be seeing? The climate of Mexico?
They'll be closer to an equatorial climate. They're not that far from it now, but they'll be closer to an equatorial climate where there will be, at the moment, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, they do have somewhat of a season's change where it's cooler in the winter and warmer in the summer. That will be gone. It will be hot all the time. And the only difference they'll have will be rainy hot and dry hot. That will be it.
And the moisture, are they going to see, because of the increases in temperature, that there'll be increased humidity all the time?
It's most likely going to go that direction. It's the question you're asking is very hard to answer with any certainty because there are so many unknowns, and I know more about this than most non-scientists, but I am no scientist. It would appear to be going the direction that you just mentioned, that those areas would have even higher constant levels of humidity and precipitation.
John, you selected the Missouri Ozarks for the place that you're going to make your stand. Is that is that still a good choice based on what you've discovered in the last
and it's not just my
years?
choice. The U.S. Navy has been making the same statements in classified briefings for 34 years now, going back to 1979. The Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks has a low population density, very homogeneous population, relatively short, mild winters, plenty of water, long growing season. No major cities. Springfield, Missouri is the largest city in the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks, 250,000 people. So it has a lot going for it, besides, of course, altitude and distance from major bodies of water. So I stick with that as being good advice. Yes, sir.
Okay, because, John, we've talked about this over the years, that Mrs. Finelli and I got in the vehicles, and we decided we were going to move from the East Coast, Virginia. We're going to move someplace where we felt it was a lot safer. And one of the things that we wanted to do was get away from, the Washington, D.C., northeast, southeast, high concentration high population concentration areas. We wanted to get away from that. We wanted to get away from high taxes. We wanted to get to where there was plenty of water, but we would not be susceptible to the problems that the ocean might cause. And we drove 20,000 miles looking for the place. Of course, we used maps and we used the internet, and we looked, at lots and lots of factors.
Right.
And we selected the Missouri Ozark Mountains, but we did not have that information about the 1979 Navy briefing. But we came to the same conclusion.
Well, and that's a good thing that you did.
So
and I'm sure that I know that once you watch my DVD, Global Warming, What the Government Isn't Telling You, I know that you had to get some gratification in your choices, didn't you, Vincent?
Well, John, we did. We absolutely did, and I'd like to mention that I shared that DVD. I brought it over to some of our instructors' homes, and we sat down and we watched it. And John, you've heard me say this before. For the entire length of the DVD, nobody said a single word. So imagine going to a friend's house, having 5, 6, 7 people sit, in a comfortable seat or on the floor watching this video on a screen, and just watching it for the entire length and not saying a word.
It's almost 4 hours long.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I hope there was a break in the middle of that.
Yeah. But it was very somber, John.
Well, it
really,
is, and it should
no
be.
one.
And getting these instructors to not say anything for 4 hours is a task in and of itself. They're all talkers.
Yeah, that's true. We are talkers, but we're researchers, and we do understand science, and we do understand mechanics, and we do understand human nature. And when you put all of that together, John, it's not a good scenario. It really isn't. And I'm glad to be in the Missouri Ozarks. People call me. They want to move here. Do people call you and ask you for advice about relocation?
Yes. I
also?
do private consultations all the time. People want the advice on where to move, how to move, what to do when they get here, all those things, yes.
Mm-hmm. And I know you've actually helped people physically in the process of relocation. So, John, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how do you recommend they do that?
Well, the easiest thing to remember is there's contact information at my website, thelibertyman.com, thelibertyman.com. My telephone is posted there, my email address. So just to remember, thelibertyman.com, and you can take it from there.
Okay. And, class, we have on the website, usaprepares.com, the link to John Moore, page 1. At the bottom of page 1, in the black section where all the instructors are, you'll find John Moore. You can click on that if you're driving and you can't write this down. But thelibertyman.com, you can click on it. It'll take you to his website. Interesting information. He can help you if you want to discuss moving to a specific area. And John, you've helped people understand the climate. Can I ask you, what will we learn if we are in your seminar at the Get Prepared Expo?
Well, you're going to learn what Matt Steiner learned when I was sitting at your dining table with him. You'll learn that this is the second most important story in 2,000 years. Everything else, including the possibility of World War III, pales by comparison.
The second most important story in 2,000 years. John Moore, Vin Finelli, USAPrepares.com. John's going to be at the Get Prepared Expo, and you'll be able to get his DVDs and his autograph. John Moore's with us, and John's going to be at the Get Prepared Expo. I'm all excited about that. It's always great to have John at the expo. You know, he packs the seminar rooms, and the class is so attentive to what he's saying, because a lot of us have not heard this before. A lot of us have not realized how serious the climate swings, these changes can be. But at the same time, a lot of us have seen the news, have read the internet. Some have watched television. They've seen what's happened at New Jersey. They've seen the devastation. They've seen the tornadoes. They've seen the hurricanes. They've seen the freezing cold. They've seen the power outages. But yet some are still not willing to prepare. I remember calling John. I remember calling someone in the East Coast, and I said, "You aware of what's happening?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm okay." And I said, there's there's a storm heading right for you, Hurricane Sandy. He said, yeah, I know. I said, so what are you doing? He goes, I'm watching the game. I said, the radar shows it heading right for your driveway. He said, yeah, I'm up on it. I'm watching the news, and I'm okay. Called him the next day, and I said, you okay? He goes, yeah, there's some transformers that are on fire in the neighborhood, and some fires and houses and buildings, blown down, but we're okay. And so my suggestion to him was to get out of there and go to a different location, get in the vehicle, and get out of the way. But he was comfortable staying where he was. John, how do you react to that when you advise people and you warn people and they just say, "No, we'll be okay"?
Well, first of all, you can't have an emotional connection to the outcome of trying to warn people. That'll just make it crazy. And there's a term for what you're describing. It's called normalcy bias. The belief that things are okay now, they'll be okay in the future. And it's also denial is part of it. And between those two very dependable human responses, that's how a large percentage of the population does respond, is by either going into denial or being stuck in the paradigm of normalcy bias, that if things are okay today, they'll be okay tomorrow, they'll be okay next year. And you and I aren't going to change that, Vince. We reach the people we can, and we pray for those we can't. And that's basically it.
Yeah. John, I've come up with the number 3%. I don't know if that number it's certainly not scientific, but I don't think there are more than 3% of us that actually get it and are willing to do something about it, even at the lowest level of doing something about it. We have the meetups, and a lot of people come, but frankly, John, there aren't very many people who are actually prepared to weather the storm. They just aren't. They talk about it, they read about it, they study it, and it kind of stops right there.
I agree, Vincent, and your 3% number is probably as accurate as anything can be. Becoming a prepper, as it's now called, is no longer a demonic thing where 10, 15 years ago, the word survivalist meant a wild-eyed, bearded man and maybe his family hunkering down in some bunker someplace and being cut off from civilization, where the term prepper has become fairly mainstream and fairly non-threatening for most people most of the time. But despite that, acceptance of the culture of prepping, as it's called now, it's still not practiced by very many people, and your observation of 3% is probably about as accurate as anybody's.
Well, it comes from looking around and meeting people in a semi-formal environment of the Get Prepared Expo and the meetups, for years. So that's where that comes from. John Moore's with us. John's going to be at the Get Prepared Expo, thelibertyman.com, thelibertyman.com. John Moore, thanks so much for being with us. I can't wait to see you at the Get Prepared Expo. Thanks so much. John Moore, broadcaster, private investigator, researcher, USAPrepares.com, senior instructor. It's going to be at the Get Prepared Expo. I can't wait. I really can't. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. Keep that in mind. Coming up next is Joel Johnson, Kodiak Survival Gear, the real MacGyver. We'll be back. I just heard at the top of the hour news, undocumented immigrants. Now, if a person were to walk out of the Chinese factory outlet without paying for a television, would that be an undocumented purchase? Unbelievable how we have twisted the English language. Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. I'm Vincent Finelli. Joel Johnson is with us. He is the real MacGyver. And he's going to be with us at the Get Prepared Expo, July 19, 20, and 21, right here in Lebanon, Missouri, at the Cowan Civic Center. Welcome, Joel Johnson.
Good morning, Vinny. It's great to be here again. I've been up all morning practicing my radio voice so I could be on with you. Looking forward to it. How that sound?
Hey, Joel, you have been with us since Get Prepared Expo #1. You travel the country. You teach people about survival and preparedness. I had a question for you, and that is, are you seeing any changes in the attitudes toward those whom you meet relating to preparedness? Are they becoming more prepared, less prepared, or are they back where they were?
No.
A couple years ago.
Very positive change in two directions. One, Vinny, people are really getting on the ball now as far as understanding the importance of being ready for any type of catastrophic event. It doesn't have to be a cataclysmic electromagnetic pulse wiping out all electricity as we know it, but it can be something like the tornado in Moore, or the tornado in Joplin. Folks are starting to realize that the same skills and needs and provisions need to be made for any type of situation like that. And I think that's very, very good. It's a step in the positive, a very positive step in the right direction. The second thing I've noticed is that there used to be and perhaps with outsiders looking in without really attending an expo, there used to be a misconception that the people that are involved in these types of events are kind of on the fringe, the wackadoos that are kind of stored away, very paranoid people, et cetera. And what I'm noticing is that many more mainstream folks that live their lives regularly in every way, go to church, go to work, et cetera, are realizing the importance of learning how to protect the sanctity of their family, of their home, and to be ready to move, to go if they have to in the event of a catastrophe. So it's becoming a much more mainstream population at these events over the last few years, and definitely people are increasing in their awareness and their willingness to do what they need to do to get ready. So I like what I'm seeing.
I have noticed that the statistics for those applying for concealed carry permits is up, and people are worried about defense. They're worried about what their government might be doing to them, and the lack of trust in the government, the federal government, is at an all-time high. As a matter of fact, there's a Gallup poll, and the number one least trusted entity is Congress. Only 10% of the people have trust and faith and confidence in their Congress. I just want to know what's wrong with the other what's wrong with that 10%? That 90% understand. There's 10% of Americans who still trust Congress. We are at historic times. The weather is out of control. It really is. We are manipulating the weather. We are causing storms. It's wreaking havoc on the planet. The food supply is in jeopardy. Those of us who are farmers are having a really tough time planning for anything. And, some are wondering, are they going to have enough hay to winter their cows? Some are having trouble planting. I drove by a farmer who's trying to plant corn. It's a mess. It's not growing worth the darn. And so people are as I see it, they're starting to prepare more because they have less confidence in the media. About 25% of Americans trust the newspapers. About the same trust the TV. These are low numbers. 25. One out of four trust the news on television. 1 out of 4 trust what they read in the newspapers. It used to be that if it was in the newspaper, it was probably true. Now, 75% don't buy it, don't believe it. We're in a lot of trouble in a lot of ways. Wouldn't you say, Joel?
Oh, absolutely. Well, Ruger is coming out with a semi-automatic handgun now called the Congressman, that you can't fire it and it won't work. And that probably has a whole lot to do with why there's a lack of trust in the government. And then, good grief, just turn on television and watch what's going on with the top scandals in this country involving the federal government. It's obscene. It really is. But it's not something that hasn't been going on for a long, long time. It's just that all of these things have kind of emerged at once. And then, of course, you got the situation with the IRS, and everyone loves to hate the IRS. So that scandal is staying right there at the top. And then, of course, if you really want to tick off the media, attack the media. And you'll notice that when you start looking at the federal government taking a shot at the First Amendment, all of a sudden the media are going to get on board and perhaps do something about it. So. Yeah, I think folks are just getting fed up. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and it's time.
Yeah,
for change.
And I was thinking about another definition for the word politician, and I think this is pretty close. Politicians take things they don't own and promise them to other people.
That's very good.
Politicians take things they don't own and promise them to other people. I think that's true. I think that's the new definition of politician.
If any business, if any for-profit organization or any non-profit organization ran their business the way the federal government runs theirs and runs ours, they wouldn't be in business more than a year. It's crazy, and they'd probably be prosecuted and in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Joel,
I get a lot of calls in the studio, and I take the calls, and I answer the phone myself. There's some that believe that you should have people in front of you to distance yourself from your customers, your class, your clients. I don't think so. I want to take the calls myself, so there's nobody between me and the telephone. And when I'm in the studio, and I get calls from people who say, "Listen, we've got an expo coming up, and we'd like to see if you'd like to be an exhibitor at our expo." And I go, how'd you find my number? And they'll say, well, I'm looking at your website, and I'm making these calls, and I'm inviting people to come to our expo. So I'm just going down the list. I'm going down the list of the people who come to your expo, and I'm inviting them to our expo. Like, okay. Here's where I'm going with that. Here are people who use us to find talent for their expos because they think that this is a get-rich-quick scheme. They really do. Joel, they think that I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
I'm sorry, am I okay now?
Yeah, you're okay. I missed what you just last said.
Well, Vinny, that happens to me all the time. You know, I've been invited, because of MacGyver 101 and because of the Kodiak Survival Institute, I've been invited to be a vendor or a presenter at virtually every other survival expo in the country. And to date, the Get Prepared Expo is the only expo that I have participated in, other than being an attendee. And I have been an attendee at several of the others, and that's one of the main reasons why I've balked at getting involved with the others. Each one I have a different reason. I don't want to name names, and I don't want to go into the specific reasons, but sometimes it's ethical, sometimes it's financial, sometimes it just has to do with the fact that they promise something that they absolutely don't deliver. And the other thing is the motivation you're talking to. If I get a sense that an organization or a group or a company is out to make a lot of money capitalizing on this event by fostering fear and paranoia, charging very high dollars to the vendors while letting people in for free to try to bring them in, then I get concerned, and so I've been very, very slow. There have been a couple of municipal events that I've said that I will participate in, meaning a small town, for example, that's having their own local survival type of expo. There's two of those that I've agreed to participate in this coming year. But other than that, you're it. And the reason is it's not that you're doing the best job out there, which you are. It's because you're the only one doing a truly good job at what you're trying to do. Vinny, I'll tell you, you've earned my respect over the last several years in working with you. You know, you are a man of integrity. You absolutely believe in what you're doing. You're not in it for the money. That's clear. And you think that what we're doing is important, and I respect you for that, and you have my loyalty.
Well, I appreciate that, Joel. The reason I asked you is because these events are propping up everywhere, and I think it's great as long as the motivation for them is of education rather than instilling fear. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we come back. Fear at expos. Joel Johnson, Kodiak Survival Gear, the real MacGyver. Joel Johnson's with us, KodiakSurvivalGear.com. Joel Johnson has been to every single one of our expos. He's going to be at the July 1920 21 Expo right here in Lebanon, Missouri. Joel, I was talking about fear. And what is happening is there are people who are appearing on the radio who are selling fear. And I don't want anything to do with any of that or with them. And the reason is I don't want people to react to fear. I want them to understand what the situation is. I want them to learn why things are happening, and I want to help them understand what alternatives they have to solving these issues, problems, concerns, if they have them. So, for example, if someone is on a very tight budget and he or she needs to buy food, there are lots of solutions. There are lots of ways that a person can prepare a long-term food storage plan, and that's something that we teach here on the broadcast classroom, and we teach it at the expo, and we teach it at the meetups. But selling fear and convincing them through a visceral reaction to, I'm going to die if I don't buy this bucket of food from a specific company because they have everything I need in this bucket, that bothers me. You know, water is very inexpensive. You don't need to buy water in buckets. You can fill your own empty 2-liter bottles with water and keep it. You can have a water filtration system, and if you have a source for water, you can use the water filtration system to filter your water. So there are a lot of alternatives, but selling fear and telling people they're going to die unless they buy this bucket. And I'm not talking about any specific company. I'm talking about fear, selling fear in general. I won't allow it. I won't allow it on the radio broadcast, and I won't allow it at the expo, and I won't allow it at the meetups. It just bothers me. And Joel, as the seminar that you teach, you're the real MacGyver. You teach people ways of thinking outside the normal, traditional ways. You
Yes.
teach them how to use the things that are around them, and you call that invisible inventions. Can you share with us what that concept is?
Sure. Well, invisible inventions is the idea of doing one of two things or both in a given emergency situation. One is having something on hand and figuring out something really cool and different to do with it that the inventor never had in mind when he made the thing. The other thing is not having it on hand but needing it and learning how to adapt things that you find in your environment to meet that need. It's not rocket science. It doesn't require a degree in chemistry or engineering. It requires the ability to look and see and conceptualize and behave differently than we do in the past. And so MacGyver 101 teaches those skills: systematic problem solving, creative processes. It's designed to empower. We show them a lot of really cool stuff we've done and do, but rather than just teaching them magic tricks and saying, you know, if you take this pork and bean can, this ink pen, this piece of chewing gum, and this wad of cotton, you can make a flamethrower out of it. The best thing to do is to teach them how to adapt to whatever they need with whatever they find. So we're about creativity, fostering creativity, empowerment, and skill building, and that's what the expo focuses on, Vinny. You know, there are two ways to clobber people with fear. One is to lie about the boogeyman, and the other one is to tell the truth about the boogeyman but not offer any solutions on how to combat him. And other programs I've been to do a combination of those two. They really either exaggerate the likelihood of a certain type of catastrophic event happening, or they or about some nebulous enemy out there that can't quite be identified, but the nebulous they are going to get you, or they basically tell the truth about the problem, but they're problem-focused, not solution-focused.
There you go. Joel Johnson. When we come back, Joel, let's talk about some changes that we've made to the Get Prepared Expo so that we can get deeper into the solutions in the time that we have at the Get Prepared Expo. And that's coming up in Lebanon, Missouri. USA Prepared. Joel Johnson's with us, and Joel, you know, you never know who's listening and who's in class. And I just got an email from one of our esteemed faculty, Jeff Ohms. Jeff Ohms is our tactical firearms instructor. His last name is spelled O-L-M-S, and he teaches classes at the expo. And he teaches our concealed carry classes in Springfield, Missouri, and he's on the radio with us. And here's the email. I hope he doesn't mind if I read this and identify him. Vince, and this just came in. Vince, I got a call and an email from these guys claiming they were at the last Get Prepared Expo and picked up my card. Never did they identify themselves as a expo promoter. Pretty sneaky, if you ask me. I have obviously politely declined the offer to go to this particular expo, and their offer is directed at vendors making money. Go figure. I never got in this to get rich, but then you already knew that. Like Joel was just commenting about himself. He's with you, and he says, I like to stick with the winners. That is from Jeff Ohms. And class, the reason that I decided to mention this is I am getting calls from all over the country, people telling me that they want to start their own expos. And I applaud them for doing that. I really do. And I tell them, don't consider me a competitor. Don't consider that. But I ask them, do you live on a farm? Do you live, how prepared are you? What do you know about preparedness? And the answer is always the same. Well, we're just starting. We're just starting. And my husband and I have this other business, and we're learning about preparedness. And, we want to have an expo, a show. We want to teach people about preparedness. And I always say the same thing. If you don't eat, sleep, and drink it, if you are not a survivalist, forget it. Because no one's going to believe you. And it's true, Joel. And they're everywhere.
What they need to be doing is attending the expo, not running one. But they're in it, most likely in it for what they think is going to be big bucks, Benny, because they see it as the issue of the hour, the hot item, the pet project that is out there that everyone is talking about, and they want to strike while the iron is hot to make money. And that's the number one reason I've detected that these other groups are doing what they're doing. You charge a ridiculously small amount of money to be a vendor at your expo compared to what the other groups charge. And then they'll let the public in for free, where you charge a very small, modest amount, but you recognize that that you're going to be bringing in people that are serious about doing something about it. If they're not willing to pay, $10 or $15 or $8 if they print out a coupon ahead of time for 2 days of school, then they're not serious about it. They're just looking for something to do with their day and want to come in and be curiosity seekers. And those folks are fine too. I love them walking in because it gives me an opportunity to increase their awareness, their and their sensitivity, as well as their competency level. But yeah, it's ludicrous to turn around and want to run an event when you don't have the slightest idea what the basic concepts are about that cause is based upon. But the country's full of those.
Yeah, we had an event. We had an event in Springfield, Missouri, about a month ago, and it was being put on by a television station, and it was being managed by an advertising agency. And I happen to know this particular advertising agency, and a couple of years ago, they wanted to do the advertising for the Get Prepared Expo, our expo, and they indicated to us that they had no knowledge about a preparedness expo. They didn't know what was involved in doing it. I couldn't believe it. So they want to manage a project. They want to get paid an enormous commission, and they have no idea what it's about. Of course, we didn't use them. But what I'm saying is there are people who portray themselves as experts that have no clue. And I don't want anybody to think that this is sour grapes. I'm encouraging people to have their expos, but don't think that you're going to make a fortune in it, because I don't make money on this. This is a break-even proposition. If I'm fortunate, it's a break-even proposition. And I call this my church, Joel. This is my church of physical preparedness, and that's why I do it. And I was talking to this one lady yesterday who wants to start up her own expo a couple thousand miles away from us. And I said, expect to lose money for the first 2 years. And then by maybe 6 expos, you might recover the cost that you lost on the first half. And you might break even after 6 expos. You might. And I think she was absolutely shocked I believe that she thought that this was a cash cow, just run a few ads and you're good to go. Absolutely not. And by the way, Joel, I got some comments. People asked me why I moved it from Springfield to Lebanon. It's 50 miles away. They said, do you realize how far that is for us to travel? It's 50 miles away. Joel, 50. If they can't go 50 miles.
You know why I'm laughing? Because we had we had people from 42 states that flew in and drove in to attend your event. We had folks from Washington, we had folks from Florida, we had folks from California that traveled there to attend for 2 days. And if 50 miles is a problem, I'll pick you up on my way up to Lebanon. Just give me a call, and I'll have probably an extra seat in my truck, and I'll get you to Lebanon if that's a hassle for you. But I'll tell you what, Vinny, if they bother to travel that 50 miles, their life is going to change. It absolutely is.
Joe, I want
have yet to be to any other event. Oh, go ahead.
Let me share this with you. I mentioned this briefly on the radio. We're going to teach a seminar about what's happening in schools. And we can do that. But one of the people who was going to expose what's happening in public schools told me that she could not come on the air with me because in her contract it says she will not talk to the media. Now, she can come to the Get Prepared Expo and talk about what's happening in public school because it's not the media. It's a seminar she'll be presenting, and I think that's wonderful. But what I'm saying is I couldn't figure out for the life of me why, if we were willing to buy tickets for teachers, their spouses, and their children so that they could teach the children in their classes, any teacher, homeschool, public school, private school, it didn't matter to me. We will let them come in for free because they are teaching the future generation. That's why we let them in for free. And anybody who needs a scholarship, they come in for free too. It's not a free event, but if the $15 or $18 or the $8 is a hardship, we're delighted to provide them a scholarship. No questions, no forms, no applications. Just tell us that they need it and they're in for free. It's as simple as that. But I couldn't figure out why the teachers would not show up. Only 8 teachers showed up at the last event. There were thousands of people, only 8 teachers. And here's why. Because in their contract, it says they cannot talk to the media. That's why teachers don't come. I couldn't figure it out. The teachers are prevented from getting involved with people in the media. Can you imagine? They're afraid of losing their pensions.
That's the answer that they came up with after the fact. But if you recall, the initial response that we got was that the reason that they weren't coming was because it was their day off. They weren't being paid to attend. All right, it pointed to the complacency of the system and the burned out people that are in the system. They wouldn't be talking to the media by coming to the event. That's ludicrous. To offer that as an excuse for not taking up on free attendance. You weren't going to sucker them in with a vaudeville hook and shove a microphone in their face and ask them a bunch of questions. You were inviting them to come attend free workshops, free education, free training, and to get involved in learning more about how to go back to their schools and better prepare and educate their children, their students. And they didn't want to do it because it was their day off. I was on a show with you 3 shows ago. I can't remember, but when we were talking about this issue, and a school teacher called up, and that was her bona fide reason. She said, you got to understand something. We work a lot, and granted they do. I mean, we have to grade papers when we get home and stuff like that. And you're asking us to come in on our day off when we're not getting paid. Well, nobody else attending got paid to be there. I don't buy that as a reason. But
that poor lady. I think that poor lady was sorry she called in. That was one of the first times I went after a caller, and I explained to her that her day ends at 3:05. She gets She gets 3 months off in the summer. She's got the best benefit package on the planet. And unless she molests a child, she's got tenure. And and I said, it's a lack of planning. It's a lack of planning that prevented you from coming to the expo, because you could have done your grocery shopping Thursday night, Wednesday night, after school, after 3:05. But no, didn't do it. So and then she told me that she's got church on Sunday. And I said, and what is it? What is it about these darn preachers where they demand that you go and do these rituals in church and tithe 52 weeks a year? They won't let you physically prepare 1 week. 1 week. 1 weekend out of the year. They won't let you, because you're just not going to make that bus to heaven if you miss that week by going to the Get Prepared Expo and physically preparing. I believe that preachers are greedy. I believe they're greedy, and they don't want to let go of that 1/52nd of the year of tithing and donations to the church or the synagogue or whatever it is. They don't want to let go of it. So they won't come to the Get Prepared Expo either. I can't believe it. It's frustrating. Joel Johnson. We'll be right back. Class, let me just mention a couple brief things. Eric Lancaster of Terraganics has been to the Get Prepared Expo. Stephen Hewer of One World Way, Synergistic Nutrition, has been to the Get Prepared Expo. Atlas Storm Shelters has been to the Get Prepared Expo. Dr. Joel Wallach's going to be at this one. Joyce Riley's going to be at this one. And this is an open invitation to all of our Genesis Communications Network broadcasters. I'm inviting you to be my guest at the Get Prepared Expo. And if there's something that you feel is important to say, let me know, and we'll see if we can get you a speaking slot at the Get Prepared Expo. So, Richard Mack's going to be there, and so many others, other broadcasters going to be there. And we're going to have an interesting seminar, something that we've never done, something that's never been done at a Preparedness Expo. We feel the country's in so much trouble that if you are interested in starting your own broadcast, we'll have a panel of broadcasters that will help you with that. And we're going to teach you some of the tricks of the trade. That will be Joyce Riley, Sam Bushman, John Moore, and Michael Evans, and possibly Beth Schonenberg will be there teaching this seminar at the Get Prepared Expo, starting your own broadcast. What's involved, the pitfalls, the velvet hammer, all the bad things that can happen to you. And also we're going to teach you how to get your message on mainstream media talk shows, how to get through the call screener, what to say to get to the point where you're on the air and you can actually get your point across. Joel Johnson's with us. Joel, you had some questions for me about broadcasting?
Yeah, Vinny, my wife pointed out to me quite a while back how much skinnier and better looking I am on the radio than I am on television, and how it might be a good idea for me to start my own radio program. And so I thought, if I'm going to do that, I might as well come to the expert and ask. You have been extremely successful in what you're doing. You mentioned just a minute ago, though, a concept that maybe the viewers or the listeners don't know what you're talking about, the velvet hammer. Can you start off by quickly telling us what that means? I know, but let them know.
Yeah, the velvet hammer. Okay, the velvet hammer is a term that was created by Chuck Harder, a broadcaster of great experience and great respect. We really like Chuck Harder. I met him many years ago, and basically what he says is, if you think that you can broadcast and talk about the truth and name the names, you're going to get called into the front office, and they're going to say, and this has happened to me, Vinny, we love you. Vinny, you're doing a great job. Now, this is not Genesis Communications. This is a local broadcast station in Springfield, Missouri, where I used to broadcast up until a few weeks ago. Vinny, we love you. The audience loves you. We love you. You're doing a great job. The show, the broadcast is gaining in popularity. People respect you. You're doing a great job. Now, there's some things that you talk about that cause problems. would you please not talk about the Baptist Church when people call you and ask you, did the Baptist Church call the police on you to have you arrested? Would you please don't talk about that? And Vinny, when there are advertisers that are suing you to shut down the radio broadcast and people ask you about that, please don't mention their name because they're one of our biggest advertisers. Please don't do that. Is that okay? That is the Velvet Hammer. And then if you defend yourself and you go, whoa, wait a minute, hold it. These guys are suing me to get me off the air. They're suing me to shut down my radio broadcast. They're demanding that I shut down my company. And you want me to remain silent when somebody asks me a question on the air about it? Or you want me to remain silent when the Ridgecrest Baptist Church comes after you and calls the police on you twice to have you arrested and there's no reason for it? And that's the Velvet Hammer. That's the Velvet Hammer. And ultimately, we're going to teach you that if you do what I do, you're going to get fired. And so now I have my afternoons off. I love it.
Let me say something quick.
Go fast.
This programming is reflective of an incredible variety, high quality, state-of-the-art stuff, and my hat's off to you, buddy. You do a great job.
Hey, I'll see you at the Get Prepared Expo. That's July 19, 20, and 21. Information's on the website. More details to follow in the next couple of weeks. I'm Vincent Finelli. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.